Thank you all for coming to the inaugural Appchain Day. I know Steve just gave a good opening keynote for everyone. I'm really excited to be moderating this next panel with some esteemed panelists from basically representing a wide variety of different Appchain frameworks and backgrounds. So we'll kind of just get into why you chose them, essentially, but I would love to just go down the line and have each of you introduce yourself to the audience first, just share a bit about your project, what you're working on, and then we can get right into the questions.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I'm Noah from Nodekit. We're building a shared sequencer to help decentralize rollups and a big focus on interoperability to aim to be the fastest L2 to L2 communication layer. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Brian. My name is Larry. I'm building Cube Exchange. It's a hybrid exchange, so centralized order books and decentralized custody and settlement.
Hey guys, my name is John. I'm one of the co-founders of Aether. We are going to be the first partial set security chain to launch in the Cosmos ecosystem, and we're an EVM that's aiming to be a DeFi hub for Atom.
Hey everyone, my name is Lior. I work for Phenix. The main idea is that we leverage a novel encryption scheme called FHE, fully homomorphic encryption, to bring confidentiality to the world of contracts. So the data that is sent to, from, and stored by the contracts is confidential for you guys.
Awesome. Thank you all. So obviously each of you chose a different framework for building either your rollup or your app chain. Noah, you went with the Hyper SDK. Do you want to share a bit about why you ultimately made that decision for your project?
Yeah, so the reason why we went with Hyper SDK was the fast finality, as well as it was essentially so stripped down that it was easier to build on. If we went with Cosmos SDK, we'd have to strip pieces out of it. And essentially with Avalanche's design, it's very minimal. So it allowed us to focus solely on performance and solely on interoperability and rollup integrations, which is what we wanted. We didn't want a ton of features on our AppChain framework. We wanted bare minimum, focus on speed, and that's it.
Awesome. And Larry, very similar question for you. App chains are not quite as popular in the Solana ecosystem yet, but Cube Exchange is building an SVM sidechain for your decentralized exchange, correct? So I would love to learn why you're opting to go that route.
Yeah, for sure. I think we kind of approached it from a slightly weird angle where we started with, we're going to build a centralized order book, and we still want to have the data availability and reliability of a blockchain on the side. So we're going to publish everything to that app chain. And so the idea was we started with what performance do we need out of the chain? And from there, it was just what is familiar to us, what can we leverage from our networks? And Solana was a pretty natural choice to fork off of from there.
Awesome. And then John, I'm really curious about this one too. Obviously, Cosmos SDK is kind of like the 800-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to designing app chains. But suffice to say, essentially, you're launching a new EVM chain as a consumer chain, and you're opting to use the Cosmos SDK. Curious if there was any reasons that might be a little out of the ordinary, why you chose to use Cosmos SDK. Anything specifically about it that you think is really going to make your project successful?
Yeah, there's kind of two prongs to it. So the DEX that we're launching on our EVM is a fork of Velodrome V1. And one thing we really admire about their execution was the integration they had with the ecosystem that they were trying to corner liquidity for. And so by being a consumer chain, we're Cosmos aligned in that way. The value of our protocol doesn't necessarily come from the software that we're writing. It comes from the way we're combining existing money Legos. So we don't want to be in charge of running our own validators. And consumer security is a fantastic fit for that. And then the benefit of partial set security over replicated security for us is that validators can opt out, and it kind of makes it easier to corral and execute on upgrades and that kind of thing with a smaller set that can move faster.
Awesome. And then, Lior, you're one of probably one of the most prominent rollups using the Arbitrum Nitro stack. Obviously, a lot of new rollups announced are using the OP stack. You guys are using the Nitro stack. Would love to learn, a little bit more about the reasoning and thought process behind that decision.
Yeah, so at first we decided to bring this amazing solution to the EVM chains. So there are a lot of different ways to approach this kind of solution, right? You can go to and build your own L1, You can build your own L2 if you want to, or you can use one of the already existing ones. So basically, Arbitrum was a great solution for us because it's a great roll-up on EVM, and then eventually the gas cost, which is a huge a huge thing for FHE operations, which are kind of high, like it's a big math algorithm to use. So the gas costs obviously were really one thing we wanted to make sure that we cover here. And then the other one, it's something that the name is fraud proofs. It's a way to actually make sure that the node is running the same code as you're expecting him to run. And Arbitrum got a solution for that. And we actually got we got a POC that shows that we can have fraud proofs with FHE operations, which is kind of great. And you guys can refer to it, yeah.
Awesome. And sticking with you, honestly, for a follow-up question, and I'll come to the rest of the panelists on this as well. You each mentioned, why you chose your specific framework, but if we're providing to the audience, almost like a rubric, if they're interested in deploying their own app chains or rollups as well, are there certain factors that you can kind of crystallize or key points that you can isolate in terms of these are the things that you should be considering when ultimately choosing whatever framework you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say there are a lot of factors, and it depends what is your application. But eventually, it would come to the security, of course. People need the security. You have the default security in Ethereum, of course, but you might need a little bit more of the security layers that other upchains give you. The performance. So basically, if you need a specific performance guidelines for your application, you might need to choose a specific rollup or upchain for you. And eventually, I think the interoperability, right? So you want people to use your application. You want people to be able to communicate with your application. So if there is no chance for you to be able to do it in the way you choose it, so it's something that we'll need to decide.
Awesome. John, I'm curious to hear your opinion as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is similar to what he said, I think, but the way we think about it is just the right tool for the job. Every application has different, needs on the blockchain scaling trilemma, and so you should pick a, framework that, fits those trade-offs. For us, we have a lot of experience with Cosmos. We've been in the ecosystem for a long time, and from a business development perspective, it fit. So that's why we chose it. It's definitely not right for everyone, but it is definitely right for a lot of people too.
Awesome. Larry, it's kind of similar question, but maybe you can even touch upon this a little bit more, because I'm sure maybe I'm assuming things, but I think it's possible when you were launching Cube Exchange, you might have gotten feedback of well, why don't you just launch this on Solana mainnet or something like that maybe, but you still opted to go with the framework, right, and launch it as a side chain. So, just kind of curious to hear your story there.
Definitely. For that question, I think it's pretty simple in that I would generally say you launch on a general purpose blockchain unless you have a business reason that you can't. For us, it was just cost. So we need to publish hundreds of millions, billions of orders and fills to the chain, and no matter what chain it is, as long as the economic model of the chain is tied to compute or storage, it's not going to be efficient for us. As for the original question, I suppose, of choosing which app chain to work on, for me, it's kind of a pragmatic choice most of the time, in that if you are working in an ecosystem already, most likely you'll inherit that developer overhead or biases. So for us, that was Solana. It was pretty clear. Recognize that part. But separately, I think the main thing to consider from a non-pure blockchain perspective is what is the cost of integration for off-chain persons or exchanges, like maybe Cube needs to index your chain, right? And so what kind of support does the ecosystem have for off-chain utilities and easy composability with that?
Got it. And Noah, I'm interested to hear your opinion on this as well. I think particularly because AVAX subnets have been around for quite a long time now, but it's not till recently, right, where Avalab's Foundation and developers really started promoting the Hyper SDK framework itself. So maybe there's kind of a difference about like what that's bringing to the ecosystem and what factors you're deciding to choose.
Yeah, so for us, what we did initially was we needed to define the outcomes of what we needed to hit to serve many, many rollups. What we needed to hit was fast finality, streamlined TPS, and less development time needed to be spent on the main chain and more on the rollup integrations and everything around it. Because of a shared sequencer, the shared sequencer itself is the main part of it. You need to do rollup integrations, you need to do interoperability stuff, you need to do all these different pieces, TA integrations. There's so many different pieces of the puzzle that we wanted a very blank slate. And we looked at different frameworks. We looked at Cosmos SDK. We looked at just building our own chain. We looked at parachain. We looked at pretty much the entire realm of all these different app chain frameworks. And we chose Hyper SDK because it was a very minimal, stripped down framework that would enable us to have essentially a very minimal stuff that was going to hold us back and just stuff that was just actions and ways to pay for those actions. That was it, and that was all we needed. So what we really did was define the outcomes of what you need to do and then pick your framework that way. I think that if you try and build the whole thing and you say, I want to build everything all at once, you want to find what the end goal is, then that's how you get into kind of development hell. So for us, defining the outcome of what we wanted to hit early on really helped to make the choice clear.
Awesome. No, that's really interesting to hear. I guess kind of like, this might be a more interesting question too, because obviously not every app chain needs this, but in each kind of framework has its own, either native piece or they're using a third-party version of this. And what I'm talking about is interoperability, right? So I'm curious, like, is there any part of your framework that you're specifically choosing where that's going to enable this type of interoperability between other app chains? Is this even something you're interested in, and kind of like how each framework differs when it comes to this type of composability?
Yeah, I'm glad to announce that Nodekit is currently working on atomic synchronous composability between rollups, and we aim to be able to essentially bridge between two rollups in under 2 seconds. So we're essentially building out our interoperability on top of our stack instead of using like the existing stuff like IBC or AWM. AWM's Avalanche's kind of version of it, IBC, but we're actually building that out, and that's a big focus for us this next quarter. So yeah.
Nice. I'll go to you, Larry, for the same question.
So maybe a slightly contrarian answer, where I think that if your main focus is interoperability and composability, you want a general purpose blockchain. And I think that's kind of the main advantage you get from a general purpose blockchain, which is that atomic composability, direct, easy access. If you're building an app chain, it's because you almost need to, at least at this point in time. And so maybe with shared sequencing, you get a lot of advantages of the atomic composability but I think by and large right now, there are sacrifices, especially in that front, that you get. So that's a business decision that people can make when they're choosing their protocols. But
no, it's good. I mean, for everyone in the audience, a big part of this day too is like not just everyone being a talking head about app chains, right? We want to foster discourse. We hope that you're getting value from it. So really appreciate the contrarian opinion. And I think it highlights what app chains are good for, what they're not good for, and they're not good for everything, but certainly can enable new business use cases like Cube Exchange.
If everybody agreed, this wouldn't be nearly as fun.
For sure.
That's right.
Discourse.
John, anything Aether's doing to bring about? I mean, obviously you have IBC, but do you have any goals along with that in terms of like bringing on liquidity to Aether or specific cross-chain applications that you want EVM dApps on Aether to support as well, like in terms of your overall strategy?
Yeah, so we, I guess, look at interoperability on like two dimensions. We have the interoperability of the EVM, and then, like you said, the interoperability of the IBC messaging system. And so, like our core thought is that like for Aether to be successful, like it doesn't matter what our like individual token does. We think there's a lot more like money to be made and value to be created by unlocking capital efficiency for Atom. We think the reason that you can't do this right now is because we lack good ways to like use the Atom to swap it, to borrow it, and to lend stable coins against it. And so the EVM does this very well, right? There's a ton of existing primitives, which all are able to work together. And so we want to combine that with the interoperability of IBC and basically let people take advantage of the like Cosmos is like vertically integrated and Ethereum is horizontally integrated. And so we want to surface the benefits of that.
There you go. Nice. And same thing, I mean, Arbitrum Nitro, it has its like obviously is going to have some type of interoperability among other Nitro like L3s and whatnot. So curious what your approach is.
Yeah, so I think, yes, working? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think interoperability on our end is quite crucial because, we're bringing confidentiality to a world that already built, right? So we're not expecting applications to rebuild their entire stack on our chain, and then we want to bring confidentiality to them as well. So Arbitrum offers us a lot of like cool suites, and building on Nitro actually allows you to communicate with other app chains or other applications in general that are built using Nitro as well. Also, you have the option to communicate with L1. So you have the option to communicate with Ethereum. And with this way, we actually offer this kind of suite to everyone. Of course, not like we do not have, for example, interoperability with Cosmos. But then again, it's something that can be built in the future. I think that the end goal of interoperability will probably be a communication layer between all app chains and all L2s, which eventually bring like all key features to each app chain, which will be great. It will be a great world for everyone.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And obviously with the announcement and rollout of Orbit as well, that's kind of something Arbitrum is doing to make the launch of Arbitrum rollups or app chains, whatever you want to call them, a lot more simple and more streamlined for developers. So I'm curious, in your opinion, in addition to that, or maybe you can even dive more deeply into how it works, but do you think there's any tooling that still needs to be created to make the deployment of rollups and app chains much faster, more easier for developers, beyond just, obviously a rollup as a service is part of that, but are there any other toolings or things that should exist that don't yet, that will make this process more streamlined and easier?
Yeah, so I think for deployment process, so I think it's not as easy as it should be. I think in the future, I think it's in Cosmos. Previously I worked in Secret Network, so I think in Cosmos it's way easier for now to have IBC to interoperate with other chains, and B to create your own application on it. And I think that Nitro offers you a great suite. But still, I think that the thing that is kind of missing is that the interoperability is not as given as it should be. I would imagine having a specific, let's say, precompile, if you guys know the term, that allows you to communicate with other chains, and it will do the entire thing for you. And I think the future will bring it, that's for sure, because interoperability in L2 is kind of a given fact for the future. So I think that this will be the main tool to be built on Arbitrum, on Nitro, on Orbits. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. And I guess likewise for Aether, obviously, Cosmos SDK is a pretty well-known stack at this point. But as you're starting to launch this ICS chain, is there anything that could have been easier for you? Like, is tooling you wish existed to make the deployment of this app chain faster, or avoid some potential hurdles that maybe you encountered?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So the main benefit that we've been getting at this stage is developer relation support from Haifa and Informal. Since partial set security is not live yet, none of the tooling exists, right? And so, and that's fine. We knew that jumping in, and it's been really smooth, smoother than we thought because of how helpful they've been. But yeah, the maturity of the EVM ecosystem and IBC definitely is nice because it allows us to focus all of our complexity on the rest of it.
Awesome. And Larry, I'm really interested to hear your answer to this question, because I'm assuming there's really none of this yet for launching SVM app chains or side chains, right? You probably went through a process of almost having to fork the mainnet code base to suit your needs. So I imagine there's a lot of tooling and infrastructure that can still be developed around the Solana ecosystem that allows for faster deployment of SVM environments. So kind of curious to hear your take on this, if you think that anything is needed for SVM developers if they want to replicate something that Cube did.
Yes, so I'd say there was one precedent for us, which was PithNet. I don't know if Wormhole does it either, but PithNet is a Solana fork also. They just took mainnet codebase, forked it off, and they run this very tight oracle, globally distributed, right? They had the same problem that we did, where they need to publish a price update every 400 milliseconds. We publish much more frequently than that, right? But the idea would be that it's not economically scalable on their front. So we did have some precedent to go off of, but yeah, right now it's pretty minimal. I'd say the general theme that I would go back to is that if you're picking an app chain, you have to have a compelling business reason to do so. And until the developer experience in doing so, like where it's as easy as deploying a smart contract, where you get the shared security benefits without necessarily operating your own nodes and like figuring out the economic model for your token on top of that, it's going to be a harder sell, which is not impossible. It's just that it'll be harder to think about.
Awesome. And then Noah, similarly, like so much is coming out around the Hyper SDK, Teleporter, right, Hyper Wasm, all of these pieces of AppChain infrastructure that are becoming a part of the stack. Curious to hear your opinion if there's also anything related to making the deployment easier, or things that are in that you have planned. Maybe Nodekit's even doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really difficult. It was really difficult at the start because there was one README file for HyperSK, and that was it. So we had to self-teach ourselves a lot of it, read through the code base, change stuff, essentially print statements all over the place to figure out how this all worked correctly. So I really think the development experience at the start was difficult, but it paid off in the end as it got more and more essentially fleshed out. But the big thing for me with app chains in general and all these roll-up stacks is there needs to be more cost transparency. It's really difficult right now if you go to one app chain or another one and you go to these customers and you say, hey, you're doing a DEX or you're doing a landing platform or anything. And they ask you, okay, how much is it going to cost me if I go to Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, ZK Stack, any of these HyperSK, any of these app chain frameworks? Nobody has a clear answer like how much it costs for every single one of them, especially with Ethereum-based costs, because they're not incentivized to kind of release that information. And I really think that having more transparency around that will allow for more growth over time. Because if you don't know how much a project's going to cost, it's really hard to bite on it. It's an impossible task for sale for somebody to actually like decide on that. It's like, okay, this might cost 10K, this might cost me 100K. Like, it makes it really difficult for this stuff to grow. And I really think more transparency around pricing and how much this stuff actually costs to do will really help this stuff grow over time.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I want to end the panel on maybe more of a philosophical question. So sorry for throwing you all a curveball, but when it comes to just like sustainability, of your app chain or of the ecosystem that you're kind of, forking your app chain from, for lack of a better word, like how do you view the value accrual to the ecosystem, right? Like, do you think that Avalanche should be benefiting from, like, directly monetarily from the proliferance of the Hyper SDK, or is it more about just like getting your tech stack adopted and maybe that grows the community? And is Nodekit particularly like have an opinion of which way this is going?
Well, Avalanche is switching now from their validator model of having to be a validator of Avalanche mainnet to now they're going as pay as you go. So essentially, all subnets have to do a small payment. It's gonna be like I think it's gonna be like $60 or something like that. Obviously, the pricing's changed with Avalanche's price, but essentially, it's a pretty small fee for us to pay out to Avalanche C chain or essentially Avalanche mainnet for the use of their validators. So essentially, I think value accrual will work that way. We don't plan on using Avalanche as our currency, so I think value accrual is definitely a problem it's the problem for the main chain to solve, and if app chains are supposed to solve it for them, I think that's ludicrous. I just think that's, like, I shouldn't have to worry about the value accrual for them. That they need to figure that out at a monetary level. App chains should be allowed to kind of do what they want, how they want, and go out and build the best possible product, not worrying about value accrual. That's kind of my view.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Larry, how do you kind of marry the two as well, right? Like Solana as the powerhouse monolithic ecosystem, and also maybe the product fit the SVM is starting to have among app chain developers. Is there a way where the two are able to kind of grow in harmony and Solana mainnet still benefits from the proliferance of the SVM, or are these kind of competing ideas and the way the ecosystem is going to grow and benefit overall is still a little bit hazy?
The road back from AppChain back to Solana mainnet feels a little tricky to me. I'd say, addressing the first part of the philosophical sustainability of app chains, I'd say it's very similar to the sustainability of the protocol you're building in period. So it's like if your business use case wants an app chain, what is the model for the business use case anyway? And like that app chain should sustain that model, right? So like it doesn't feel significantly different for me than launching any other app outside of the fact that you have potentially additional technical burden in doing that. As for going back to the original community, I don't envision Solana ever being a hub or the relay chain type thing. I see it as a powerful general purpose state machine, which is, I think, like probably the default place you want to be for blockchains. But if your niche fits it, right? Like, so for us, centralized order books with a single point of shared state, that is going to be a really hot bottleneck in any blockchain, no matter what model you use, right? Central limit order book, that is. What the kind of divergences in implementation detail will definitely be pretty interesting.
Awesome. And then similar for, I mean, I think it's a big topic, right? Like how the hub is going to benefit from the proliferance of consumer chains, but the hub also doesn't benefit from just the proliferation of the Cosmos SDK, right? There's no value accrual back to Atom token holders just from that. So is that something you think needs to change, or do you have a different opinion of maybe how Aether will provide value back to the hub?
Yeah, I think right now, or rather, like the way we think about it is we want to grow the pie, right? So the existing protocols in the Cosmos ecosystem, we want them to grow. But if you're a new protocol getting started, it's very hard to do all the things you need to do as a protocol. It's hard to bootstrap liquidity. It's hard to get all this stuff going. Replicated security solves part of that, right? Now you don't have to run your own validator. One of the things that we think Aether will remove the barrier to entry for is it'll make it easier to incentivize liquidity. And so that'll be one way, and then the composability we think will unlock, or will rather lower the barriers of entry to new protocols joining, which should be good for the entire ecosystem.
Yeah. And Lior, kind of similar question. How is Arbitrum, the roll-up itself, right, going to benefit from the proliferation of Nitro stack roll-ups or other L3s? Or because obviously you're taking a very different approach than just the OP stack model, right? So love to hear what Fhenix is doing.
Yeah, so maybe there are two questions in here. How Arbitrum benefits from the other Appchains that are built on it, and then how Ethereum benefits from Arbitrum, right, which is also kind of built on it. So actually, I think that the second question, got its answer during the days. So actually, at first, people might think that Arbitrum are stealing the people from Ethereum, right? Because it's easier to build on Arbitrum. It's way cheaper to build on Arbitrum, but then again, they're bringing more people to Ethereum, right? So basically, those people who wouldn't build on Ethereum because of the prices, because of the amount of time it takes for you to deploy your contract, in here, it's not the reason anymore. So people are coming to the Ethereum world and eventually paying gas to Ethereum due to Arbitrum's stack. So it's kind of good for Ethereum. The same answer should probably be used for the benefit of the other Appchains to Arbitrum. So I think that the other Appchains are bringing new, let's say, customers, but the more accurate word would be users to Arbitrum. And then again, let's take Fhenix as an example. We're bringing a new thing to Ethereum in general, so people in Ethereum will probably, or hopefully even, be using this kind of solution for them. So actually, we're bringing traffic to Arbitrum, which eventually will end up with a lot of new users, or people would consider using or building on Arbitrum because it's easier to communicate. So yeah, it's a lot of things that end up together.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Really glad to have you at Appchain Day talking about a comparison of Appchain frameworks. Obviously, there's a lot of them now. It's not just the Cosmos SDK, as the audience can see. There's a lot of new exciting Appchain frameworks, and really excited to have each of you up here representing them today. And hope the audience got a lot out of this panel as well. But that concludes the comparison of Appchain frameworks, and we're going to actually move along to the next speaker now. But thank you all for coming up here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
We'll
Thanks a lot. Thank you, guys.
All right.